If you don't want to, I will.
Hey, well, I want to because we're live, Tony. Welcome to Unverified, the first one after the season. My YouTube algorithm knows that it's time to start showing David Colts videos. I just watched the highlight of the 0-2 Monday Night Football game where Manning led the Colts back against the Bucks. Oh, by the way, we've got like 100 million things to talk about in IndyCar racing. So even though we're not racing, it's a hell of a day. A hell of a day. Will Power officially, although, my God, he's been gone from Penske for like 3 months, if we're being honest. He's gone from Penske. Rinus gone from Coin. We got a new track coming in Ontario. We might be going to the nation's capital. There's so many dude bro sources to talk about. It'll make your head spin worse than I did before Waka Flocka even came on in Nashville. But Tony, good weekend in Nashville, I would say, for IndyCar. Good racing, good vibes for the most part. It's a shame it's already over.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a graphic yesterday. It's 180 days until the green flag flies again at St. Petersburg, Florida. So, man, that is rough. Hopefully, when we learn when the new schedule is released, probably in the next 2 weeks, I would say, there is going to be a big gap towards the summer because of the World Cup. But glad to be here. Thanks, everybody, for subscribing. It's crazy that we're already towards the end of the season. We got some great stuff between the three of us coming up. Yes, you did not enjoy your time at Waka Flocka, but you know what? I did. It was a blast.
Can I tell a story about Waka Flocka?
Then you missed one hell of a time at Tootsie's. So we'll start with your story.
At Tootsie's.
We'll start with your story at Waka, then we'll talk a little bit about Tootsie's.
I'll tell you. So I think we should. I'm gonna be really nice here for a second because genuinely, shout out Ray Hall and Prema for inviting us to their post-race parties. That was very nice of them. So we started the night at the Ray Hall party celebrating Louis Foster's Rookie of the Year title. It was really cool. I don't remember what the place was called. It was in the Paper District or whatever they call it.
What would get celebrated if he didn't get Rookie of the Year?
Well, I mean, as we know, there's two types of celebration in Nashville. The one where you are making a celebration of something, or one where you're burning it down. And there was a lot of both in downtown Nashville. But no, it was cool to go there. And then we went to Waka Flocka, which was which was way out in the middle of nowhere by Vanderbilt. I didn't realize that. So I had to drive a few, and I won't name names.
Swap it was.
Yeah, there was a few. I had to drive a few dumbasses over in a rental car that wasn't mine. And Tony always bitches at me because he says I have an SCCA license, but I had to park this big ass Jeep and go backwards. I'm not a good backwards driver. I'm not Toe Mater. And in SCCA school, they teach you how to drive light cars forward, not heavy cars backwards. Okay. So they made fun of my parallel parking. So I'm already in bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. When I walk into the Waka Flocka, I'm Waka Flocking into the Waka Flocka. Waka's not there yet because, of course, he's not there yet. And there's vaping, or not vaping. There's hookah. There's twerking. There's music that's so loud I cannot hear or speak to anybody. I'm just feeling this like I had a hybrid failure. Like, remember how I said, like, I was going into Milwaukee with a fully charged supercapacitor. That mofo blew up. I was on fire. I was like Robert Schwartzman. I was Robert Schwartzman at Thermal driving into the Prema party. I was already on fire. So I'm sitting there looking around and I tried to be a good sport. I tried to be a good sport because, I mean, at the end of the day, I was there to hang out with my friends, and I kind of let my friends down. You know, we let the team down. You know, and there comes a time in a race, everybody. Money doesn't matter. Living doesn't matter. Winning is the only thing that matters. And I said, you know what? You guys are having a good time. I'm going to go sit in a McDonald's down the street, eat a snack wrap, and tell the homeless people very politely, no, thank you. I don't have any cash. And so that was my night. And I said, you know what? After that, I'm good. You guys go have fun. I'm not going to be fun. I'm not going to be a good time. I'm not having a good time. I just want to go home. I'm sad that IndyCar's gone. I'm sad that I can't talk to anybody. I would love to talk to my friends, but the DJ was too loud. So, and I was overstimulated, and I crashed out.
A couple things. No, Bobby Rahal was not there to see if David was unblocked on Twitter from Bobby.
No, we could have made up. We could have kissed and made up. It would have been great. It would have been the perfect environment. I would have been, Bobby, it's so nice to, meet you in person. It would, thank you. This is such a beautiful event. It would have been so easy. But of course, I couldn't talk to him. I can't talk to him if they're not there.
And for those that don't know, Waka Flocka is a rapper. He was at the race. They interviewed him during the race on Fox, and we were invited. It was the Prema after party with Robert Schwartzman dressed like he was going to be put into a casket, and they were going to send him under. I mean, he had all white on. It was interesting. But I will give David props. I think in him and I's probably 2-year friendship of really being close friends, I've probably put him in several uncomfortable situations, and Sunday was certainly one of those. When we went to Waka Flocka, he eventually gets on the stage, says about 8 words during a song, and I said, all right, time to go see Willpower play some drums. So
hang on, can I address some rumors and speculation real quick on Chubbs? Yeah. Believe it or not, I went out clubbing on, what was that, Friday night? Was that Friday or Saturday night? That was Thursday night. Had a great time. Got to hang out with a lot of cool people, a lot of cool friends, no problem. Didn't crash out, no problem. So I don't know why the vibes are wrong at Waka Flocka. Boy, I gave it a college try because we were at Vanderbilt, but it didn't work.
Well, you don't drink, for those that don't know. So that, it's nice for me to usually always have a DD, so I do appreciate it.
I'm belligerent enough without alcohol, all right?
That's why I usually, where we go with David, we always try to go to, live music bars. Because, a club, if you're not totally wasted or just, trying to get wasted at a club, with that music, it's not fun. I'll be the first to say it's not fun. Not a good time.
And I'm not a hookah guy, so I don't really get hookah, but it was a cool vibe for a while, but even I was like, all right, let's get back down Broadway.
Even dumpster diving Tony Donohue said, nah, I can't do this.
I was like, all right, I got to go get David. So we went and got David from the Vanderbilt campus McDonald's. And we did have a great time on Thursday. There's going to be a really cool video that comes out with their friends from Fan Amp. David and I, along with Logan and Greg, the pedal car, what do they call those things? The peddler around Nashville taped some videos.
Yeah,
it was.
I've never even gotten to do one of those. I'm pissed.
It was funny. Marcus Erickson was walking by, and of course, we were the only people of the 30,000 walking down Broadway to notice him. So he took a photo of us. Then we saw Scott Dixon. Overall, outside of the racing, which of course we will get to as well. Always good time in Nashville. Got some brisket at the Buc-ee's. We went down there on the board. It was delicious. Had an overall really good weekend. Let's jump into the race itself. Shout out to Miles Rowe. Another oval win in Indy Next. Dennis Hogger, of course, wrapped up the championship back in Milwaukee, but they celebrated that. IndyCar. Exciting racing. I thought it was a really good race. Guys like Connor Daly putting on a show, driving up through the field. Joseph Newgarden kind of getting off the schneid to get the win in a roller coaster weekend and a roller coaster season for Team Penske. It's funny. He was a little short with me in the press conference, but I got to spend about 5 minutes with him afterwards. It was a really good conversation. I had to get him away from Rami for those that know that lore, or if you don't want to know, which is good. Again, great to see some cool people down in Nashville that support us, support David's channel, support my podcast, and, of course, Unverified. So what did we learn? Paddle Award qualifies on the pole. I thought it was a really good race. The Firestone tire, Firestone, even though more in the Firehawk hat, probably didn't have the best Sunday. That's for sure. But Joseph Newgarden picking up the victory. Penske finishes the season winning 2 out of the last 3 races with Power winning at Portland a few weeks back. David, your overall thoughts of Joseph Newgarden getting on the board, winning, and then let's talk about your Alex Palou interview as well. Kyle, let's go to you first, and then David, you can take it away.
Which I called that, by the way. I think we have yet another soundbite this season where David called me crazy. It's probably
there's no way.
It's probably because I made the Taylor Swift reference, but still, I was right. I was right. Okay, David.
What did I say specifically? I
don't know. I think you just hated on Taylor Swift. I think.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I didn't hate on Taylor Swift. The only thing I said about Taylor Swift Was it anybody who thought she wasn't getting married after he went on his damn podcast? I mean, you're nuts. They were already married at that point. Whatever. Where was I going with that? Oh, Nashville. I thought it was a fantastic race. It felt a little like old school IRL at times, which like.
Wait, you don't like that? You're a kart guy. So I've always said this, Tony. You got to listen to me. I was an IRL guy until my nuts dropped, and then I learned to appreciate kart. But I mean, like you look at the old school IRL races, and it wasn't totally that. Like the old school IRL races were 10 rows deep of two by 2x2 Noah's Ark racing. But like at the beginning of the race where Palou and Pato had that great battle, and then late in the race between McLaughlin and Kiff Dog, there was some really cool stuff, like the side-by-side stuff that everybody kind of remembers from that kind of mid-2000s IRL racing. But also, I don't know what they did at Nashville, and the drivers complain about it every year, the package. But I just think it's a great balance of like super speedway racing, pack racing, and then like short oval like traffic racing. It's got all of the elements of all those things that everybody likes about all of the different aspects of oval racing. So it's a really fun race, and I just thought it was so unpredictable. Yes, Pato had the tire failure, which probably led to a lot of the unpredictability of the race. But you look at David Malukas, who was probably the second best car, getting taken out in lap traffic by Louis Foster. And then it was the battle between the Penskes and Alex Palou, and then Kiff and Simpson, of all people, that was kind of up there. Connor Daly had a great run. It was just a fantastic race, I thought. Just a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, and you mentioned it, Kiffin Simpson. We've got to get a big shout out to him. I mean, we talk about the progress and was he brought up to IndyCar too early? But he has proven really all year that he is capable of being in that 8 car, brings it home with his best oval finish of his career, finishing 4th. I wasn't a fan of the crowd. I thought it was about 60 to 65% full. There was a lot of sections. Looked like not a lot of people in the David Land section. Oh, wait, they didn't do that this year, so maybe that was why. But wasn't a big fan of the crowd. I thought there should have been more people. We have not, and I repeat, have not seen what the rating is on Fox, which is interesting in itself.
Holiday weekend.
Maybe they wanted to let some of the other news breathe so that they can have it if it's a good one. If it's a bad rating, they should have let it out today because we would have just walked all over it and poo-pooed it with all the Will Power and Rinus VeeKay information.
It was a holiday weekend. It comes out a day later on a holiday weekend, so we'll see it tomorrow.
So we will see it tomorrow. Yeah, overall, I thought it was a good race. The battle up front, even from the start, Pato and Palou side by side. I mean, obviously Rasmussen biffs it on lap 1, which, that shows you how IndyCar 1 week, what do they call it? You could be the bug, and the other week you could be the windshield. Overall, I thought Kalamailot at Prema had a really good day. Rinus VeeKay had a really good day going. There was times in that race that Pato was going to win. There was times that we thought it was going to be Palou. Then it was McLaughlin. Then we had that late race restart, and Joseph Newgarden really took over. But yeah, I thought it was overall great racing. I've been preaching it all year. We need another high-speed oval in this series. Although we were doing about 201, 199 to 201 in qualifying, but overall, I thought it was a really good race and a really good overall race weekend. David, you made a good point. We spent parts of Friday at the distillery with Borchetta, who I feel does a really good job. It's always great when you walk into a media center and the great staff like Merrill and Ed meet you, and you got a spot and everything's all good. I like this to stay at the Oval. I wish they would continue to embrace the Oval. I know that they want to do some stuff downtown, which I can agree with to an extent. But I think they just need to embrace that this is going to be an Oval for a long time. I just don't see it going back to another street course because the product on the Oval right now at Nashville is certainly working.
I'd like to make your point a little bit stronger, Tony. I'm going to just say it, and this has been a problem since it moved to the Oval. And granted, like I got to see some of the behind the scenes stuff with this last year when I worked with the race. But like to me, the biggest issue with Nashville right now is the identity crisis. I think this is a race that has an identity crisis. There's nothing wrong with the party of downtown Nashville per se. I think that there are a lot of positive aspects to that. I think that's an attraction to bring people in to entertain them. But I get the sense sometimes that we're trying to shoehorn downtown Nashville into an oval race that takes place 30 miles away. I think you can integrate downtown Nashville, but like, do we really need to have the media scrums down there? Do we need to bring all the drivers down there? Do we need to have announcements down there, or should it be at the racetrack? And I think that's a big, not a big problem, but it's a problem that I've had, and I complained about this about Milwaukee, is that with the oval races, I think they really need to be 3-day shows. Find a way to make 3 days worth of content. My suggestion would be to do all the Indy Next practice and qualifying on Friday, and then for the media that's there to cover the Indy cars, do the media scrums and that kind of stuff on Friday. And then Saturday, headliner is the Indy Next race. You have the IndyCar qualifying, IndyCar practice, give the fans a good day there. And then race day, it's race day for the Indy cars, and that's it. That's what you do. And then have all your pre-race pageantry, set that up, make it look awesome, give the fans a lot of entertainment, and focus on the one race, because I think that would help Indy Next. I think it would help ticket sales across the weekend. It would make the rest of the weekend feel more coherent, more cohesive, more focus on where the people actually need to go to get those stands filled. And I think it would be a good thing. I'm not saying cut out downtown Nashville. There's a lot of positive aspects to that. The party, again, like I said, is a draw for a lot of people. And a lot of people in our industry, they like to drink. So we understand that that's a good place to blow off some steam after the season. I understand all of that. But I would like to see these ovals, especially with Indy Next as a support series, give them a little bit more love, give them a little bit more track time, and give them a little bit more spotlight. And even if the Indy cars only want to run for 2 days, it's all good.
I agree with that. And I'm glad Tony brought up this point, because this is something I wanted to bring up last week, because I'm of a differing opinion. I think I'm on the other side of you guys here. I think, yes, I think to David's point, I think you need, I would say you do need to do things downtown. You know, the media scrums, all that, if you're going to have a race in the oval. To me, the oval it's too far away. I think the street course races that we had the first couple of years were excellent. The attendance was great. The energy was great. It felt like an event. And when you go to the oval, it doesn't feel the same way. Now, I think the oval race was awesome. The racing has been amazing. And like I said on Twitter over the weekend, I honestly, I think Nashville is such a good location from Indianapolis, and where the heart of everything we do is, but it's far enough away and in a market that we don't hit, that I think there's a world where we could have the oval race and the street course race. But I think an event downtown, maybe not that terrible street course they had envisioned a couple of years ago, but I think we have to be down there. I think that there were so many people there that those first couple of years of the street race, the concerts were absolutely packed. The bars were packed. And honestly, as someone this weekend, granted the race was an oval, as someone this weekend who was away from the track and was just viewing the event on social media, I thought all of the content that I saw that was from downtown, like on Broadway, was spectacular. That was the stuff that really I saw that I thought was awesome, and it looked awesome. It looked serious. And I don't know. I just, as someone who's been to both of the events, the oval, it would be perfect if it was closer. It would be, because I think you have to do all the pre-race, all the pageantry, bring the guys downtown to downtown Nashville. I think it's perfect for the sport and for a season ender. Like I think you have to be there.
They did less pageantry this year. Like they had a pit stop competition last year, and they didn't do that this. So I think they're already making the shift. But that's the thing, is like it just feels so non-committal. That's the problem I have with it. It's like,
I agree with you on that front. I feel like they do have an identity crisis. Like you can tell that they want this to be a street race, and they're kind of forced to be on the oval. So I don't think they've fully put their feet in the.
You gotta love the one. You gotta love the one you're with, though.
I know.
And we were talking. I mean, we were kind of talking with some people in the industry this weekend, kind of when we went out, and we were like, we were kind of looking around Broadway, and we were going, you know how they were going to race down Broadway, and I'm looking at all these bars, going, wait a second, how much money was that going to cost to rent all these places out, buy them out?
They were selling the upper levels of the bars to teams to sell, and they were selling those out as packages to watch the race from the tops of the bars.
You still got to have somebody to buy those, though. That's the thing.
And they were sold out, I believe. They were selling.
I think when you look at it, to the first point that we talked about, it was a really good Indy Next race. David, I know you've been preaching having that as the Saturday showcase, which I would certainly like to see. Give you Friday, then have them be the Saturday showcase. I thought it was a really good race. Miles Rowe winning. Gaboon vipering down the back straightaway. Everybody was making moves. Look, if they could do an oval and they could do a street course, that would be a cool world to live in, because I understand the value of a street course, right? You're downtown. There is a vibe. David, as you mentioned, they didn't do the pit stop contest this year. They did have a cool concert. There was banners up at bars. You knew the race was in town. But I think there were still a lot of people that don't realize that, it's not a street course anymore right next to the stadium. It's been moved south. It's been moved south 40 minutes. And that's a crazy drive from downtown Nashville. It just seems like it takes forever. With that being said about Nashville, it's a good track. I wonder what's going to happen when maybe Borchetta says, all right, it's street course or nothing downtown, because that's obviously close to his distillery. He's going to want to push fans and customers into his distillery downtown. But I do like that oval. And if there is a world that we can live in where both can exist, and you could do some sort of ticket packaging and maybe a bus or something that would get you from downtown to the oval, that would be worthwhile. But I think that's a bit of a stretch. But overall, I like the oval. I thought it was a really good core fan base of fans. As Kyle mentioned, it's a pretty decent drive from Indianapolis, so not hard to get there. But I do see the value in street courses, even though I'm more of an oval guy. But there's a value to be able to have that festival, right? Have those concerts, have it within walking distance of where all those people are and where the hotels are. So I don't know what the balance is, but if there was a world that we could live in, that it's the oval one weekend and then finish on the street course, I'd be all about it. But we'll see on that one.
That'd be my perfect scenario, because I think the oval race is great. I think it's great. I just don't see where it fits into the future because of its locate. Like, I don't know. Like, I know that. Look, I mean, we talk about marketing these races and getting people to show up, and I think people in Nashville will go. But I think the bulk of your audience that's going to go to a Nashville IndyCar race are coming from Indianapolis. And if you tell them, hey, let's go to the season finale in Nashville, and you get a weekend in Nashville and you get to go to an IndyCar race, I think that's why you've seen such great attendance at that event. And then I think when you make it a street race, that's where you get a lot of the locals and a lot of the, a lot more people, because you can literally stay downtown and walk to the track. I think it's a little bit more it's not as convincing when you tell them, yeah, you can stay downtown in Nashville, but you have to drive 30 miles to Lebanon. And not many people are wanting to drive down to go stay in Lebanon. I just don't think it's feasible. I
mean, I like the idea of doing the 2-week show to finish the season. Like, I think that's such a smart idea that I don't think it would ever happen.
Yeah.
But oval's got to be last. I want to see the season finale on an oval.
So that's what I was going to say, is that but I guess from a marketing standpoint, this is where we're running into trouble for a couple of reasons. And this again is the identity crisis that we're getting to.
Yeah.
Are we trying to have a racing series, or are we trying to have a party series? And if the question is, if we're trying to just entertain, if we're just trying to, make the sponsors and the partners and everybody feel good, and it doesn't really matter about what the on-track product is or what the championship battle is or how pure it is, XYZ, of course, you finish the season on a street course. Everybody can drink at Waka Flocka and have a great time. But I think, you look at, let's just, go into fantasy land here for a second and imagine that the championship was still undecided going into Nashville. And the start of the race was Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward side by side for the first 20 laps of the race. If that was a championship battle, people wouldn't sit down. People would be standing up cheering. I mean, it would be unbelievable. You're just not going to have that kind of a race on a street course, especially in downtown Nashville. Trust me, I drove around downtown Nashville a hell of a lot this weekend on a variety of different vehicles. It's not really a racing, it's not Shoreline Drive at Long Beach. You're not really going to have the kind of racing potential in downtown Nashville that you would have in another city. I guess the one thing I'll cheekily say is, if we did have a 2-week blowout bonanza in Nashville to end the season, that would obviously be the first IndyCar playoff. It'd be the playoff in Nashville, 2 races to decide the champion, maybe 5 drivers. You got to get it done on the oval and get it done on the street course. There you go.
Dump the idea. People are gonna get off their rockers if they put a playoff, a two weekend playoff. That would be.
It's the first annual IndyCar shootout at the Big Machine Bourbon Music City Grand Prix. Come on down to Nashville. Yeah.
And David Land will never be able to interview Chip Ganassi again as long as they both shall live.
You thought that Waka Flocka crash out was bad. Wait until they bring playoffs to Nashville, baby. I'm going to be miserable the entire weekend.
It's funny because I brought that up, that was probably going to be something that Fox promotes and maybe even launches towards IndyCar and says, hey, let's look into this. And man, somebody in the media absolutely just took it and ran from downtown Nashville in the media bullpen all the way down to the super speedway. Kyle will tell you that story. You could probably guess who that was. I don't want to get too far into the media coverage this weekend from others, but we met some new people. We had some good times. There was other people that are very interesting. If you want to check out my Twitter banner photo, I'll give you a really good story. David's probably knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure you know exactly where I'm going with that one. But all right, I guess we'll get into it. Appreciate the 275 people that are currently listening. Let's get into the silly season talk. And I'm going to start with something that I was told on. I love it. The NFL Films music. Let's get it on. Dude, bro, sources will be rumbling, bumbling, stumbling to the nation's capital next year. Everything that I have been told from a reliable source that in August of 2026, the streets of Washington, D.C. will be filled with the very low tones of the IndyCar. I was told on Saturday that there was a very great chance that IndyCar will head to Washington, D.C. in 2026. It looks like the date could be in August. Now, where my brain went, and I brought up to David, was, well, they better still have Mexico on the schedule because there are going to be a lot of people up in arms if IndyCar comes out and says, Mexico City isn't happening, but here's Washington, D.C. for you. Now, to the East Coast faithful that continue to scream, we need East Coast races on the IndyCar schedule. Here's one for you in the nation's capital that is more than likely to land on the 2026 schedule. David, your thoughts on another street course, this time possibly around the Lincoln Monument? Who the hell knows?
We got to talk through this one because I know that this is legit. I mean, obviously Adam Stern reported it. I know what you heard and what you saw about Washington, D.C. So I suppose it's coming, whether it comes next year or the year after that. So my initial thought was there's a Fox connection here. There's got to be. And to your point, as you mentioned, my second thought was optically, considering all the controversy that has happened recently, particularly around, political aspects and, in IndyCar, optically is not having Mexico City on the schedule, which, by the way, the CEO of DHL came into the post-race press conference and said, we better be in Mexico next year because it's super important to DHL that we're in Mexico City next year. And I'm sitting there going, boy, I hope they're in Mexico City next year because, boy, oh boy, that sounded so. The idea of that maybe being a replacement for Mexico, and again, that's just speculation. That's us kind of putting two and two together, right? I think I need to say that. I think ideally you have both of them on the schedule, but I would have to believe that Fox has something to do with this, and whether that's a Band-Aid to put over Mexico City, a big market, an East Coast market, Fox like finding a way to make that happen, I don't know. The other thing about Washington, D.C. is I don't think you're going to race actually in the city center. In the past, there was one other auto race that took place in Washington, D.C. It was the American Le Mans Series in 2002, and they raced around in the parking lot of RFK Stadium. Now, just
Le Mans Series raced everywhere, man.
They did. I'll tell you, I don't give this away because I do want to make this a video, but I'll just say this. Sports cars have raced in some goofy odd places, man. Goofy odd places. IMSA, IMSA has been in some weird spots in times and places, and one of those was Washington D.C. And ironically, the racetrack was there for many, many, many years. I mean, it ran one race in 2002, and then believe it or not, folks, politics got in the way in Washington D.C. and they had a contract through 2008. They only ran 1 year. I know. I can't believe it. But the track was there essentially until I think 3 or 4 years ago, and then they eventually built like a tennis court or something and destroyed half of the track. So that was great. Thanks, guys. So if they raced at RFK,
he won today in the U.S. Open wearing purple.
Well, we love purple. I don't know if you could use RFK Stadium. Aren't they going to tear it down too? Isn't that the plan?
Yeah, isn't that a thing?
So are we going to end up with another Nashville situation where you go for 1 year, then they tear the stadium down, and then you're done? I mean,
you just go south to Richmond, Virginia.
Well, there you go. And but we're not hearing Richmond. We're hearing Washington D.C. We're hearing street course in Washington D.C.
Yeah, but if it were to be shut down in a Nashville situation, like you just said,
then just go to Richmond. Then don't even bother with the street course. Why do it for a year?
Mark, the vest said, "Look, we have to stop thinking about these racetracks that we've already been to. We've got to look forward and change things."
You look foolish when you don't have date equity. You look foolish when you don't have date equity, or even if you have date equity in Nashville, you don't have track equity because they done ripped the pit lane out. So frustrating. Sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
There's still a hairpin that exists to this track, but you're right. I had to look this up. They did add tennis courts. And the reason I think they'd run it for a year is like the reason this race makes sense is next year's like an anniversary for America, I believe.
250th anniversary, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like the only way it makes sense. So like maybe that's why you do it for a year. IndyCar has this big, 250th anniversary America celebration. I mean, that's like it.
DC 250. I mean, that sells itself. That's easy.
We need fireworks, Uncle Sam to wave the green flag. We need back it up Terry to be in. We need to back it up Terry out of his wheelchair and put him in the 2-seater for the ride. It'll be a freaking blast.
It's in the same context as like I'm pretty sure the UFC is doing a fight in the like courtyard of the White House or something.
Is this the excuse to get Trump to an IndyCar race? I'm just gonna address the elephant in the room. That's it, right? Like the elephant in the room. There it is.
If he ain't golfing,
throw it out there.
If he ain't golfing, maybe.
Well, so in Washington D.C., how many people are you actually gonna have? 10, 20,000? It's not like the Indy 500, right? Yeah. So if Fox owns a third of the series and you're racing in Washington D.C., it's way easier for Secret Service to control Washington D.C. than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Let's hope Connor Daly has a ride for this thing because that's about as American as it gets. Maybe we'll have Joey Chestnut break some record of eating the most somethings. Obviously, you can't move the Nathan's hot dog contest there, but my goodness, that would be fun. I hear
they serve Red Bull at the Nathan's hot dog contest.
Well, there you go. Another announcement coming tomorrow with Green Savory is the movement of the Toronto Grand Prix. It looks like it is going to be moved closer to a Honda headquarter. Maybe there was something into that. David, I know you're in Toronto this year. I know you're begging for an outline very similar to the Cleveland airport. Give us a rundown of what you know and what we'll find out tomorrow when it comes to the Toronto event being moved.
Well, everything I've heard is it's going to be at hold on. Well, I got to remember the name of this airport. I keep wanting to call it Buttonwillow. That's not right. The Buttonville Airport, which is in that town in Ontario. I guess. Okay, so I gotta make sure this is correct information. You're kind of putting me on the spot here, but I believe the airport is next to a stadium where the Coldplay incident took place.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so there's a stadium there.
We know some IndyCar employees that might be hiding.
Unbelievable.
So get the bingo card out. There's a stadium there where you could host and park cars and all this stuff. We hope it's on the airport proper and not like taxiways and city streets, because we've seen good ways to do airport tracks and we've seen bad ways to do airport tracks. I put Cleveland on the highest pedestal of just racetracks in general. It's one of the best it's ever been. You can also do an Edmonton, which I thought Edmonton was mid at best. Or you can do a St. Pete, which is okay, but it only uses one runway, and the rest of it is city streets. So again, if it's on the airport, which we don't know 100% that it's on the airport, but it's around the airport, I've got a pretty good idea that that's the location of where the race is going to be. If it's on the airport, I can't wait, because I've always wanted to see. The one thing I've always thought would be perfect for Cleveland is the Dallara DW12. I would have liked to have seen like the 2012 to 2014 cars race at Cleveland. I think that would have probably been the best road course race we've ever seen. But I will take this. On an airport, wide track, fast track, 3-4 wide, be amazing. So I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping they use the airport. So we'll find out tomorrow for sure. But that's everything I've been told has been airport. People yelling at me saying, "You're going to bitch about Cleveland. You better show up to Toronto next year." I said, Deal.
We learned earlier today, very early this morning, that Rinus VeeKay will no longer be with Dale Coyne Racing in the future. Now, I would say this. I believe he does know where he is going, and we spent some time with Rinus this weekend. We actually saw him at Buc-ee's on Thursday.
Oh, we did. That's right.
We pulled in the parking lot, and I was like, who are we going to see in here? What driver? And I was like, it's going to be Rinus. And it sure as hell was. So we got to preview the mustache early on. And then Friday we had a breakfast with Todd Alt and the rest of the Dale Coyne Racing crew announcing the livery. And, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if Rinus kind of, they're not going to bring him up to talk. And he's kind of speculated they want Rinus back, but they're not sure. He
didn't look super happy either.
It looked super happy. I was like, this is a little awkward, and I think the three of us and most anybody who came in contact with him loves Rinus. He's a great driver. He's great to the media. He's been on this show. He's great to a lot of his coworkers, as I've been told. And then I find out Sunday after the race, because I just decided to go Roman and had a good conversation with
Roman?
Joseph. Just went Roman around, seeing who would come up. And I was told that Rinus had informed the team that he would no longer be with Dale Coyne Racing, and that Dale Coyne was actually going to take the 51 and go back to the original 19, which confirms something that I don't know if you and I were talking about off the record or just on our ride down, because we don't listen to music, about how there's, we haven't really heard of Rick Ware being involved in that 51 car in a long time. So they are going to go back to the 19. And I was told that it would possibly be a driver that Todd Alt has wanted to work with before, which my mind immediately went to Romain Grosjean. And there had been rumors with the fact that Grosjean could be coming back. Then I was told that it is more than likely that Dennis Hogger could end up in one of the Coyne seats with some alliance and engineers from Andretti. And then obviously we heard the news that we knew we were going to hear. Will told me before the race, I said, hey, we'd like to talk to you after the race. And he said, well, I'm going to go to RP1 and I'm not going to know anything until Tuesday. And I said, okay. So I let all the other people do their scrum with him, because he told them exactly what he told me pre-race. So I didn't have to worry about going and seeing Will to get that confirmed or anything. So that was fine. So Rinus VeeKay out. We could talk about some landing spots. Foyt and Juncos, I think, are the front runners. And I think that this possibility of Rinus going to Foyt came up very late, almost very late, maybe even as late as Thursday of last week. There's before we get into all this, David, I think you'll agree with me. We have heard so many rumors. We have heard so much speculation. We have heard so many things thrown against the wall, from a Joseph Newgarden retirement, the Prema being back on the market to be sold, and it could possibly be sold to Legacy Motorsports and Jimmy Johnson, a rumor that we heard back in May that's currently might be back on. What's going to happen with Prema? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Rinus and Will, and then Kyle has made an incredible graphic for us here on Unverified to discuss everybody's contract and what that car could look like. So we'll start with the two biggest news of today. David, Will Power gone, as we've known. Rinus VeeKay out at Coyne. Okay,
I guess since we talked about Big Rinus, we'll start with Rinus, and we'll kind of finish with Will Power, because I think we're going to have the most concrete stuff about Will Power, because that's, as far as I'm aware, that's the closest to kind of being done in terms of dominoes falling. Rinus.
It'll even be announced tomorrow, right?
That's what okay, so where's that coming from? Because I keep seeing that being brought up. I believe it. I just don't know where that's coming from. Who's saying that Andretti's making an announcement tomorrow? Where did that come from? Do we know?
Chat.
I have not seen that.
I've seen it. People have been making that claim, but again,
it.
I
I
don't know
saw
where
a
it's coming
screenshot of an article, but I don't know specifically where it's coming from. I tried to look at Racer. It wasn't Racer.
from. It
It
sounds
wasn't
like
Daily Downforce, although they had
everybody's
a
saying
banger
it's
today.
Pruitt. Everybody's saying it's Pruitt. So we're gonna give the credit to MP. We're gonna say Marshall Pruitt. He got it. So congrats, Marshall. They could have done it today, but they didn't. Okay. So there you go. So we'll talk about that in just a second. We'll focus on Rinus for now. So there were some interesting things that came out of that Todd Alt press conference. Number one, Dale is believing that his driver is going to be announced by Halloween. Both of the cars.
Whoa!
I know. Both of the cars are apparently going to be Alt Alliance backed at some point. At least that's what Todd Alt said. Todd has tried to buy into Dale Coyne Racing and, in fact, tried to buy into the team during the press conference, which I thought was an interesting move, and actually even admitted that was the reason he left Ed Carpenter Racing, is that Ed didn't want to sell an ownership stake in the team. So that was pretty interesting, and yes, I think we're all. You have to be body language you have to be a body language expert in racing, because a lot of people will speak non-verbally about things, as it turns out. And Rinus, you could definitely tell it with him standing there. He wasn't long for the 18 car in that seat. So, so what's interesting, Tony, is that everything I heard this weekend said Rinus was going to Juncos. You've heard that Rinus is going to Foyt. And I know that the craziest rumor that I've heard for the last couple of weeks, and it's tied to that stupid Joseph rumor that everybody keeps saying he's going to retire or quit or whatever. And there's also, I've heard more BS about Joseph Newgarden, and I get it. He's unhappy. We all know he's unhappy. But would you take yourself out of a Penske car? I feel like we talk about this all the time on the show, right, Tony? All the time. You don't do that. There's two cars. It's either the Penske cars or that 10 car. You don't take yourself out of it. So the other thing is,
any Ganassi car, but yes,
or any Ganassi car. But that's the thing, is that Rinus to Penske has come up a couple of times. So it's interesting that Rinus to Foyt has recently become a thing. So Tony, kind of lead me down the path here. Where has that come from? Why is this suddenly in play? Because I was under the impression that we were going to have some pay driver in the 4 or the 14 for next year.
Yeah, so I have heard Juncos and I have heard Foyt tied with Rinus VeeKay, and Marshall Pruitt all but hinted today that Rinus would end up at Foyt. Now, I think Rinus, who Chip Ganassi has had interest in, obviously there was a point in time where I think Ganassi had to pick between either going to get Rinus or going to get Palou, and Rinus wasn't available because Ed wouldn't let him go. And Alex Palou ultimately ends up there. The rest is history. Wins every championship that he was given data to. And the one year that he wasn't in the middle of the summer was because there were some lawsuits involved. I don't think that's talked about enough. Our friend JVS brought that up. I think a lot of this hinged on whether or not Team Penske stayed with their alliance with AJ Foyt. And obviously that 4 car and that 14, we've seen the progress with having the alliance with Team Penske. I believe that is going to stay. I believe that is still on the board. And I believe Rinus VeeKay, who is a huge talent, and could he eventually wind up at Penske? Maybe, it just depends. But to that point, I don't see Joseph Newgarden retiring. I take drivers at their word, just like I did with Alex Palou when he told me to my face in a one-on-one setting that he was not going to Formula One. I believed him. I don't get the sense that Joseph Newgarden is going anywhere. Now, is he upset about some things? Yes, but he seemed to have some chemistry. And I'm slipping on the gentleman's
Jonathan
name.
Duguid.
Yes,
Jonathan Duguid.
They seemed to have a pretty good rapport when they were in the press conference after the race on Sunday. With Rinus VeeKay, I think that outside of Will Power moving, Rinus VeeKay is the best driver available right now. A driver that can win an Indianapolis 500 in a Foyt car, maybe. Certainly qualify up front. Certainly be a driver that can do good. Look what he had, one of the most underrated seasons. He did so much in a car that was maybe not to the potential of his driving ability, if I'm saying that right. So I think Rinus to Foyt makes some sense. If Penske says, yeah, that's the kind of guy we like to see what he can do. Penske's going to get to a point where it's like, okay, there's too many irons in the fire, right? You've got Miles Rowe. Kyle has had knowledge, and I'll let him discuss this, about another driver in the pipeline that could ultimately end up at Penske. There's always going to be rumors of whether Scott McLaughlin moves on and goes to NASCAR with Penske. That's certainly a possibility. But Rinus to Foyt, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think Rinus knew that was probably an option until late last week, because there was a Marshall Pruitt article 2 weeks ago that said both parties, both Dale Coyne Racing and Rinus VeeKay, had mutual interests. And I think that was probably true at that time. And I've said this on the show 1,000 times. What's reported one day could be different the next week, because people start talking when they get together and when you start learning some things and agents are involved. I think Rinus makes a lot of sense, especially if that Penske alliance stays there. And now Roger can evaluate Miles Rowe when he gets his opportunity, can evaluate a guy like Rinus VeeKay. And for whatever reason, and I personally don't see this happening, but it is possible, if David Malukas somehow weren't to work out in that 12 car and the results aren't there, and you give him ample amount of time to find those results, and they still aren't there, you've got somebody waiting in the pipeline. Personally, I think, and although I know people are going to talk about his past and some of the mistakes he's made, but I think he's grown and matured. I personally think if I'm Roger Penske, I take Santino Ferrucci in a flyer in a Penske car, because I think that would be massive. That's not talked about enough. But from what I know, Rinus VeeKay, it was down to Foyt or possibly Juncos. I was told possibly Juncos as late as Sunday, but David, did that change? Did Connor Daly once again in an oval race towards the end of the season save his job for the next season?
Let's go over the chart. I feel like this will give us
chart time.
I feel like if we discuss it with this on the screen, this will give everybody kind of a good base of what everything looks like, and not only for this year, but also for next year. So we'll get to Penske and Foyt last, and then we'll go from there. Ganassi, Gift Dog I don't think his terms are actually out there, but I think he's definitely signed through 2026.
He's signed till the money runs out, son.
And Dixon, because when he signed his development deal, it was like, however, but Kiffin signed for next year. Don't worry about it. Dixon, kind of the same thing. I think Dixon might be 27 as well, but Palou we know for sure, because there was a lot of lawsuits where all this came up to where we know he's 2026 and that's it. So next year, get ready for a re-sign. I think it's interesting that Rosenquist is on a contract year next year. Armstrong obviously just re-signed. Herta, he signed through 27 with the little asterisks, because we know that he might go to F2. And by might, we're talking literally tomorrow. This might get announced that he's going to F2. Kirkwood is through 27. He was on a 3-year deal the same time. It's the same contract Ericsson was on. So Ericsson and Kirkwood both on contract years next year. So already Ganassi, if you take a look at the Penske that we're going to get to later, McLaughlin and Newgarden a lot of contract years next year for all these top teams, but not the case at McLaren. Pato's through 2027, and so is Lundgaard. Siegel, it was kind of unclear if it was 26 or 27, but if you were to ask me, I would say 26 is probably a contract year.
That's what TK said. TK said that on Fox.
Yeah. I would reckon 27
TK confirmed on the interview last week that they are running it back, and he will put his job, quote, on the line for Nolan Siegel.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
So if you didn't see that on the Unverified channel, we've got an interview with Marcus Armstrong up, and TK says that in an interview that we did in Milwaukee.
Gotcha. So the contract year for Nolan Siegel next year. But I would reckon there's probably an option on him for 27 if he does have a good year. Like, that just makes sense, right? Graham Rahal signed for life, because, like, look, man, he's going to retire with this team. Like, who else is going to take their chances on a 36-year-old Graham Rahal? Like, he's not a 2-time champion. He's not a 500. It's not Will Power. Like, so He's there. And
Those are tough
Devlin,
words. Hold on. Those were tough words for Kyle to say. I just want everybody to
those
know
were
that.
very hard.
I
hard.
heard, you heard the pain there.
Yeah.
I don't want to ease past that. I just want everybody to know that.
We move on. We got Devlin. He's signed through next year. There was a little bit of chatter about since he didn't make the leader circle that there could be a switch there. And you got to remember that they also have Yuri Vips and Toby Sowery in the pipeline. And I think all it would take is a good paycheck from either of those two drivers to be slotted into that 30 seat. So that's something to keep an eye on. Louis Foster, on the other hand, when he signed last year, it was a multi-year deal, and Bobby sounded very adamant because they had just fumbled Lundgaard that they're looking to sign Foster past 26 as well. So they're high on Foster, and I think that's going to keep going. Rossi and Rasmussen's contracts, that was very hard for me to find. I had to fix those a few times because based on the internet and anything I could find, Rossi, it was said that it was a 1-year deal, but on off track, he said it was a multi-year deal and he wasn't specifying how much. But at the end of the day, both of these cars, I just put them on because I think we know they're signed. They're just not putting it out there of how long or when.
Just to be clear, it is not common knowledge that Christian Rasmussen is signed.
I don't think it is. I did a lot of research today, and if anybody thinks I'm wrong or thinks that I'm be my guest.
No, I was told wrong when I asked that question, so I'm just making sure.
But I just just be my guest to go and find this information. Someone go in my DMs to show me that I'm wrong. I tried. I looked through 27 drivers, and if they had a contract next season, all right?
He's doing more work than most of the agents in the sport are doing.
Juncos is open on both fronts. Neither driver at least has a contract for next year. We will see about that. Stingray is saying he's staying put, and I think Daly is hopeful that he's staying put. But a lot of rumors, a lot of talk around those two cars right now. And Dale Coyne, we know for a fact that they're both open, and I'm very happy to see the 19 car return. Prema, so many rumors on Prema and whether they're even going to exist next year. But what we do know is that both drivers at the beginning of the year, we were told that they are on a multi-year contract. So if they are back next year, if we do see Prema, then the contracts are going to tell us that they're going to be back. Are both drivers actually going to be back next year?
We will know in the next week.
We'll know in the next week.
Believing contracts in this day and age is insane behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I know a few things. I know a few things on the premise side when we get to it. So, David, I'll let you go, and then we'll run through kind of what we've learned and what we know about what's going on with this silly season list.
Well, we'll knock out Juncos real quick because he asked me about Connor. Again, I'm pretty confident Stingray will be back there next year. So even if he doesn't have a contract right now, I don't expect that to change. It could. We have 6.5 months. Anything could happen, right? Anything could happen here.
So I'll say this about Connor. And I interviewed Ricardo Juncos, and I said, another top 5 out of Oval for Connor. I don't think we are in an IndyCar era anymore where a driver would run on an oval and another driver would run on the streets and the road circuits. I think we've kind of gone away from that, even though everybody would tell you Connor has to get better on road and street courses. The sense that I get is that they would run it back for at least one more year. Now, if there was an outside shot that the rumors start coming back up from Juncos that part of it is up for sale, does somebody come in, buy in with money that takes care of Connor staying in that seat? Obviously, Stingray probably brings enough money for the both of them. And those two seem to get along for the most part this year. But as of right now, I would say more than likely Juncos runs it back. I think that's kind of the sense that you got too. Am I correct on that, David?
Man, I'm worried about Connor.
Yeah,
I'm worried about Connor because I don't. I mean, remember how late he got signed last year? And that was after that Milwaukee race where he got him in the leader's circle. They got a charter that everything looked kind of stable. The money still wasn't there though.
Yep.
Does he have a full budget? I don't think he does yet. So,
and I think too, to that point, obviously what we talked about in the offseason is Polka Dot going to come up and have that money that probably Connor thought that he was going to have. How much is the AM/PM sponsorship that we saw on, I believe, 3 races this year? How much was tied to Connor? I believe he mentioned somebody came up with an autograph session if that was the right sponsor and said, "Hey, Connor, I want to be a part of this. How do I do it?" If I'm not mistaken on that, I could be wrong, but
It's at Long Beach.
It depends on what the goal is for Juncos. If the goal for Juncos Hollinger Racing is to just make as much money as they can, then maybe you bring in somebody that's going to pay for that ride and you bank whatever Stingray brings or whatever that does. But having Connor Daly in a race car brings more eyes to your car, more eyes to your team, a better chance of having a big result on an oval, especially. He ran really well again at the Indianapolis 500. Probably didn't get the result that he thought that he deserved. Same with Gateway. Had an incredible run in the last couple of oval races as well. Connor brings eyes to your team, and what Connor Daly brings is sellability. You should be able to sell some sponsorships around Connor Daly. I don't know if there was any money exchange for the All-American rejects over the weekend. That was probably just hey, we need somebody to play here this weekend because Borchetta didn't get us anybody. Oh, who we're going to call all reliable All-American rejects. And, oh, hey, by the way, we're going to put you on a car to make it exciting. So
I do believe
I think Connor
heard some money was exchanged for that. I do believe there was a conversation had and that was a real thing.
So got some money. But, again, Connor, I believe, put that deal together or at least initiated it, I believe he mentioned that. So, again, you got to ask yourself, if you're Juncos Hollinger, you've got a guy in Connor Daly that you can sell, and you got a guy in Connor Daly that's going to get you results on the ovals, especially. Like you said, you got to love the one that you're with, and I would suggest JHR does that. Is that what they're going to do? Yep. That's still to be determined.
You gotta hope. I think if you're Connor, you gotta hope that AM/PM thing can become a full season, because it was a couple of races this year. I think you just got to hope, because I know he did some social media stuff with them. They were trying to add value to that sponsor. Mm-hmm. The car certainly looked good. So I hope that becomes a full, because if that's it, then boom, you're good if you're Connor. But if that's a 3 or 4 race deal, that sounds an awful lot like a Dreyer and Reinbold, not a Juncos to me.
Well, there is that. All right, I don't know where we're going to go to next, so I'm just going to go down the line. Go ahead, Kyle.
So one thing on Connor from me is I saw a lot of Connor slander over the past few weeks, and he finished 7 spots ahead of his teammate. He finished ahead of all Rahal cars in the points. He finished ahead of Marcus Ericsson in the points. And Nolan Siegel finished ahead of an Andretti car and a McLaren. And I think that speaks for itself. In the top 5 of the season, also to boot. Like, I think it speaks for itself.
Connor Daly was 6.
Who else are you going to get that has the visibility of Connor and can do what he did, Thomas Schechter style, at all the ovals, going around the outside, making moves? There is something to be, maybe instead of replacing Connor, we work on making sure that some of those late race pit stops go as smooth as they should.
So next thing, the kind of where I wanted to go with this is I had a few things to point out, because we kind of skipped Penske and Foyt at the top.
We are going to have to talk about Penske. So we haven't even talked about Will Power yet.
and by the way, hold on. We knew we were going to go overboard tonight. We got all the time in the world. So that's just, we've got 350 watching. We thank everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, but we've got still a lot of the silly season chart to talk about. So
Joseph and McLaughlin right now are signed through next year. They are both in contract years for next year. And I've seen a lot of the comments kind of rolling in on people, talking about Newgarden and kind of what his plan is. And I've kind of had the feeling that maybe next year is going to be his last year at Penske. What do we think the odds are of that? Because I think that's kind of what the feeling is right now. Because you look at especially when you see how many open seats there are. There's a ton. There's any top team. I think Andretti, maybe Ganassi, McLaren for sure. There's a lot of teams that are going to make a jump for him for sure.
If Joseph has a season like he had this year, I think that conversation becomes a lot more realistic. But the percentage and the chance of that happening again is so small. It's so small.
Well,
so I don't know.
We look at the changes that have happened through Penske over this last year, and we look at Will Power leaving. We look at the comments of today where it kind of seemed like, Penske got rid of him. Will said it's time for me to make a change, according to the press releases.
Well, Will wanted a
Does
3-year
Newgarden-
contract, and they didn't want to give him a 3-year contract.
Does
That's-
Newgarden
Yeah.
make that move?
So with Penske, and again, I think we learned this year once again that most of their drivers do not talk about contracts too much into the media. I think Will was a little bit probably taken off guard when it kind of got around starting in the month of May that Scott McLaughlin had inked a new deal. I'm sure that probably, not personally, but I think that probably rubbed Will Power the wrong way. Look, we've talked about it. There has been several rumors of the future of Joseph Newgarden in the 2-car, whether it's legal things outside of the cockpit or he's going to retire, which I think, again, with the retirement rumor, somebody with 241 followers decided to throw something against the wall and hope it stuck. Somebody threw something up against the wall and hope it stuck, that somebody's going to be released from their contract or bought out, which we've heard. We've heard all these things. And, even though we are unverified and we do hear a lot of different things, we're not just throwing crazy shit out there. There's so much stuff that we have probably kept under wraps because, one, it sounds so outlandish, and two, it's like, you know what? I'd rather just not break that than break it and it be right because it's an awkward situation, or break it and then it ends up not being right. I'm going to just stick to this. Joseph Newgarden is going to be in the 2-car until he retires, maybe. I don't know. This dude's one. We just, we think about the cheating, and I understand what that can do to your psyche and what that can do to you mentally. And I understand that is probably draining at times. And he said this to us, I believe, when we were in Detroit for the unveiling. He said he's an introverted guy and he likes to just kind of be alone and get away from things. But I will believe Joseph Newgarden isn't in the 2-car when I see that. And I don't see that happening with any of the years ending in 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, or 3.0. So that's just my personal opinion. David, your thoughts on the future of Joseph Newgarden and Team Penske? I think there may be something to McLaughlin maybe going to NASCAR in a couple of years. We'll talk about that on Unverified in 2026 or 2027.
Yeah, wait a second. Hold on. Like, first of all, the McLaughlin and NASCAR thing, I don't know where the hell that's coming from. Because
your boy Thompson Bell.
Well, but it's wrong. Scott keeps denying it. I understand that he lives in Charlotte and he hangs out with all the NASCAR guys, but every Penske driver, unless they're named Joseph Newgarden, lives in Charlotte. So I don't know why, just because he was a stock car driver in Australia, does not automatically mean that Scott McLaughlin is going to be a NASCAR driver at any point. Like, anytime he's been asked about it, he's been like, yeah, I'd like to do a one-off, but like, I'm an IndyCar driver. I'm here to drive IndyCars. So until he changes his tune on that.
Was he brought over here to run NASCAR until Cindric won the Daytona 500?
Is that true? Is that a fact? Or are we just throwing things against the wall? I don't believe that. Why was he driving an IndyCar then? Why was he driving an IndyCar at St. Pete in 2020? Why did he drive an IndyCar at 2020 COTA and then go one of the top 3 guys in preseason testing? Like, you don't put him in an IndyCar if you're not going to run him in an IndyCar. I don't understand the Scott McLaughlin slander. I get that it would be cool to see him at the Roval. I get that it would be cool to see him at Watkins Glen. I get that it would be cool to see him on the airfield course in San Antonio or whatever. Not San Francisco. What's the place San Diego, where the Chargers used to play, where they should still play. It would be cool to see him do those things, but he's an IndyCar driver. On the subject of Joseph Newgarden, there are so many dumb rumors out there. I think you said it best, Tony, on Twitter a couple of days ago. Stop believing dumb shit. We hear so much stupid crap. Like, again, you and I, Tony, we get wrecked all the time about what we say and, what we put out there into the universe. If we really put everything out there that we hear, because we've heard everything, every possibility. Like, it is just some of this stuff is so harebrained and ridiculous. And the fact that people are believing that Parsons guy or whoever that other guy was who said that somebody was going to retire, like, so much of it is horse pucky. And until I see something concrete that says Joseph Newgarden's leaving Team Penske, I'm not going to believe it until I see something concrete that Scott McLaughlin is going to run full-time NASCAR. I'm not going to believe it. It's you know what happened with Will Power? You know what's happening with Colton Herta? There's real concrete evidence that these things are happening. David Malukas going to Penske. Real concrete evidence that David Malukas is going to Penske. These are things that we can 100% say with certainty this is happening. And there are a whole bunch of other things that are not happening, that don't have concrete evidence, that people are just throwing out there. And I get it. It's fun to throw things out there. Trust me. I know. And it's hilarious that some of these things get traction for absolutely no reason. I wish I understood it, because I wish some of the truth that I put out there got nearly as much interaction as some of the fake things that people put out there. But that is what it is. That's the nature of the game. That's the nature of the beast. We just need to become more media literate here in IndyCar, guys. Look for the F in downfords, people. Downfords. There's an F in it. There you go. That's my rant.
All right, so Team Penske, I know there is some things in the pipeline, Kyle, possibly in the future.
There's some things to get to here as well. So when you look at Foyt, we didn't go over Foyt yet.
You look at it.
Malukas also has the asterisk because we know, like David said, concrete, that he is looking at the 12 car. And the only thing I think that is notable, when that does end up getting announced, you'll see that. So he was on a multi-year agreement with Foyt through 2026. So when this gets announced, the first thing that we need to look for, that will be intriguing to me, is if he's sent to Penske on an option, because I'm sure it's an option in his current contract that he can get moved up to Penske from Foyt, or if he gets signed to a new contract on a multi-year deal. That's going to be, I think, the big key to that move, which obviously opens up the 4 car. And Ferrucci is also on a multi-year deal. And I hate the term multi-year deal by now. Just tell us when your damn driver is done driving for you. Please. It's going to stop all this speculation. But
multi-year deal, typically, this is how I operate.
Yeah, but it's like typically
it's 2 plus 1. So it's usually a 2-year deal plus a 1-year option. That's typically what it. Now, it doesn't always mean that, but I trust me, I understand your frustration, Kyle. Continue.
So that's why Ferrucci is 26 or 27. We did hear some rumblings, some dude bros, some rumor zone out there that Ferrucci would not come back. That was kind of put out there, but he is under contract. So I guess, David, your thoughts on Malukas to the 12 and kind of so he is signed through 26 and kind of the rumors on the 14 car. Because also, I think the other thing to note is there's obviously Miles Rowe. Miles Rowe, I'm pretty sure, has been kind of quoted as saying it's a 50-50 shot.
He is re-signed
next year.
Re-signed with Force Indy. He's coming back next year in Indy next.
Yeah, with Able.
Okay, so yeah. So it's also and then looking at Penske for the next 3 years, they do have Miles Rowe and Max Garcia under a driver development contract. Obviously, they've developed Rowe for 2 years in Indy next by now. I saw someone commented earlier, I think that they should stick him in a third Foyt car next year at the 500. And I think when you get 2 oval wins in Indy next, it's time to let's try it out. Let's get there. And Max will be in Indy next year. So yeah, there's a couple of drivers that they are currently developing that they are putting money into that I'm sure they'd like to get their money back on and to get their use out of, and 2 drivers under contract for only 1 year. So
well, Tony mentioned Santino and like how you would kind of be happy if you're Santino. I don't think you're happy if you're Santino right now. I feel like he's on the hottest seat of them all because you've got a big wave coming behind you. You know, the Foyt team's going to be interesting over the next 3 or 4 years too, is we don't really know what form that team's eventually going to take or what it's going to be. Is it going to continue as a feeder system to Team Penske? Is it not going to do that? Is another team going to take over that role? You know, what's the long-term future? What's the long-term plan for AJ Foyt Racing? These are a lot of the questions that maybe aren't going to be answered this year or next, but it's going on down the line. And so I think right now it would make sense for Team Penske to keep that as kind of a feeder team to them. If they have all these, if they've got Garcia and they've got Rowe in the pipeline, I love the idea of Rinus signing there because Rinus, I think, really deserves a shot in top tier equipment. And if he really has been kind of, flirted with by Team Penske, that would be a good place and a good spot to have him waiting in the wings in case any of this other stuff, if Joseph does just suddenly decide, I'm done, just pulls the car in the pits, gets out of it, and, leaves, right? Or Scott McLaughlin decides, actually, I do want to go to NASCAR. Roger, let's do it. You've got something there. You can move Rinus up. But I do love the idea of Miles in the Indy 500. I think there's a risk there, obviously, if having his IndyCar debut be the Indy 500. So, and he's also not even tested an IndyCar yet. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize about Miles Rowe is that he just hasn't had the budget to go, which sounds crazy, I know, because everybody knows Penske's funding that whole program, but he has not had the budget to test an IndyCar yet. And so the fact that that hasn't happened has been a bit of a head scratcher from my perspective. I'd like to see that happen, certainly before an Indy 500 attempt is made. That's for sure.
So wrap it up, Foyt. And yeah, I think we should see Miles probably test an IndyCar sooner rather than later. And I know that, I believe teams get an extra day or an extra session or some sort if they do want to test an Indy Next driver. Something that was brought to my attention over the weekend and could be tied to Juncos, could be tied to Foyt. Foyt makes a lot of sense, but obviously with the new Rinus VeeKay news, maybe it doesn't. But where Jacob Able ends up, and does the Able family and Able Motorsports buy in to a race team? Obviously, they're headquartered here in Speedway. There are teams in Speedway, as we know. It would make sense, David, from the perspective of, let's say the Ables bought the 4-car and ran Jacob, while the Ables are also running Miles Rowe in a Indy Next venture next year. Maybe you would bring up Miles for a third Indianapolis 500. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. That is something that was rumored that, if you think about it, does actually make some sense. But from the standpoint of where Jacob Able is going to go, I still think that the jury is out on that. Is he a possible candidate for a Junco seat? Maybe he brings, obviously, some funding to that. Could they buy out Prema? There's been some rumors that Prema is back for sale. I think, although on the chart we see that the Prema drivers have contracts for next year, I don't believe that they are set in stone to have those drivers in there. In fact, I know for a fact that both drivers right now, if you ask them off the record and they gave you an honest opinion, they would both tell you they don't know where they are going to be coming up in the 2026 season. I know that from pretty much two of the best authorities you can get on that when it comes to Prema. So let's go back to Able. David, where do you see possibly Jacob Able landing for his second IndyCar season?
That's a strong question because it's hard to know. They're certainly not lacking for budget. That's never been a problem with the Able family. There's been some thought, I think, in that camp of doing it their own way. I didn't get the sense that they were particularly happy with how things went at Coyne. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but they've obviously run their own stuff before. I believe they still own a chassis. Do you run an unchartered car, especially if the future of Prema is looking less and less solvent? Do you buy some of the equipment for Prema? Do you run a 1-car, maybe a 2-car team if you can find another driver with some money? Do you get someone in there who can coach Jacob Able? I don't know what you do if you're Able Motorsports, but I think it would make sense. It's tough. And I think the other part of the Foyt equation, which is an interesting thought process or a thought experiment to go down the road on, is that one of the suggestions, I think it might have just been us spitballing, but the idea of maybe an Able going to Foyt, for example, and trying to keep that connection going with Miles Rowe would be to try to keep the Penske connection going at Foyt. Well, if Rinus is on Penske's radar, and Rinus is an easier way to keep the Penske connection, but also have a driver in there that's capable of at least matching what David Malukas has done in that 4-car this year, and I would say most likely going to exceed it once Rinus gets in that seat. I would say that the Able possibility probably goes away a little bit. Although, if Prema gets merged into another team, let's say, and it becomes a 2-car team with somebody else, or maybe it at best it becomes making a 2-car team a 3-car team, then you would have an open space on the grid for an open car. So if you wanted to, if you're the Ables, maybe you could go to Foyt and have a 3rd car, run unchartered, but be on that program, be with Santino, be with Rinus, because I know Jacob and Rinus get along very, very well. And
rest in peace to that 1-year tenure of those gentlemen racing on a team. We had a lot of fun with Coyne and those two this year. Sorry, continue.
No, it's all good. Yeah, but that was it. They had great chemistry. They were fun to be around together, and I think that I think that would be a situation that the Ables would want to be in.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just speculating, but I think
But if
that
you're
would be cool.
the problem is if you're running a 3rd car unchartered, it really depends if Prema is still alive or not. Because if you run an extra car, you're just risking spending a lot of money to maybe not make a few races. Which in a Foyt car, you should be able to do that.
And my question to that is too, what I think IndyCar is going to have to understand is the charter system important enough to continue with it, or do you make amends with the chance that one of your newer teams, your newest team, could be sending 1 car home every week? And I think if you're Prema, you're going, that's certainly a possibility. So if we have an opportunity to sell off some of these assets, let's do it.
Well,
because we talked about, could Will Power stay in a 4th car? Well, it's like, if Will Power is in an unchartered car, are you really going to send him home? There's people in the stands that are there to see him wearing the 12 jerseys. And are you really going to send home one of an entry of a new car or a new team that just came in the sport this year?
But you're not going to see you're not going to see the field exceed 27. That's what I'm saying. I think that's what Kyle's point is.
Yeah.
Is that if Prema goes away, there's potentially 2 spaces on the grid where you could do an open car. So that's where that makes sense for an Able to go and bring their program to somebody else. And by the way, they happen to be across the street from Foyt, right? They also happen to be across the street from Juncos if there was something there, right? So sorry, Kyle, keep going.
I mean, if so, are you saying, Tony, that if they did exceed to a 28th car, that they would slim down, they would just run it anyways at some tracks, or?
So, I mean, and I think it was a lot to do with whether or not Will Power was going to run in an open car. Obviously, we know that that's not going to happen. I think charters limit the growth at times. I know we've heard the likes of Chip Ganassi say that charters, the rising tide rises all boats. What I'm saying is if Prema stays and they are running outside of the charter system and somebody shows up, right, with, hey, we're going to run Miles Rowe in 4 races. We're going to get him in 4 races, let's say, on an open car. How important is it to have the charters, and how important is it to send home a Miles Rowe if he doesn't make it, or to send home a Prema team that is struggling for sponsorship, that is struggling to stay afloat, although they blew, $39 million this year and are probably up for sale for close to $20 million if somebody does buy in. I just think there's something's going to have to give.
Okay, the comment section is correctly pointing out something that I pointed out in a video when I talked about the possibility of an extra car coming from another team for Portland. Yes, there is a provision in the IndyCar rulebook that would allow for more cars to be added to the field, even if they do not qualify in the opening round of qualifying, to be added to the field at tracks where the pit boxes exceed 27, or where they can safely do it more than 27.
And where can we do? Where is there any tracks that you can't exceed that many?
Milwaukee, Toronto, although Toronto's going away for next year.
Toronto's going to change.
So Milwaukee, Toronto, Detroit would be one. Probably Arlington.
Hold on. Are we sure about Milwaukee?
Yeah, for sure.
There's 3 or 4 open boxes. Well, I think 2 were for the NTT pit box.
That's like the death pit box, though. They literally put the NTT pit box on the very, like we were complaining about the pit entry for the 27th car. We do that every year. You could, I guess you could, but
that's what you get for running outside of a charter.
Well, maybe, but you just don't. You can't be, but you can't have that going into the pit lane. But there's enough tracks where if you tried to run a full season with a 28th car without a guarantee that you're going to make every race, That's a fool's errand, I would say. That's tough. Even if IndyCar has the provision where they can put you in the field at most races, they can't put you in the field at every race. And so that's tough. I mean, I'm not saying it's totally outside of the realm of possibility, but we hear team owners talk about risk all the time. Team owners that can afford risk, by the way, talk about risk all the time. And you're talking about minnows and bottom feeders taking that sort of risk. I don't know. It's pretty tough. It's not like the old days. Like, again, you have to pay millions of dollars to Chevy or Honda to get an engine. It's not like you can just get a Buick or a stock block Chevy that costs $50,000 a weekend to run. It's not that way anymore. You know, as a privateer in IndyCar racing these days, it takes a tremendous amount of money. And you at least should probably have the guarantee that you're going to get a shot at every race but the Indy 500. I would say that.
All right, so we have kind of said what we needed to say on the Able front, the Foyt front, the Prema front. Let's get back to that chart and continue on down the line of what we can see for the future of some of these teams. I'll say this about Ganassi, as we've talked about. It's going to be really interesting because, you know, kind of what we saw with Will Power, we're going to eventually get into a situation with Scott Dixon, right? You're going to be, okay, is he ready to retire on his terms? And that's fine, or do we get to a point where maybe they negotiate? I don't see Chip handling Scott Dixon like Penske has handled Power, but that's certainly something that's going to be on the horizon. We talked about McLaren. Obviously, we know they're going to run it back next year, or as they're going to run it back until they finally say enough is enough with Nolan Siegel, although he was the highest finishing McLaren over the weekend. Let's get to this Andretti Global situation. And there has been so many rumors that we have heard. The first rumor, David, you heard in Laguna was that Marcus Ericsson was going to be bought out. Now, that was before Laguna.
Okay. So the Laguna rumor was that Will Power was going to Andretti.
Yep.
Before that, there had been talk of Marcus Ericsson getting bought out. And at that time, I speculated that they should go after Rinus, but there hadn't been the Will Power talk yet. The Will Power talks to Andretti talk started in Laguna Seca.
So, and I've been told that Marcus is safe for next year, and those rumors have kind of died down.
Yes.
And going into his free agent year, I mean, he's going to be free agent the next year, that Marcus Ericsson is going to be back. And I've even been told by sources that would have knowledge that Towers isn't going to screw him over and do that. Now, let me ask you this, David. Is there any chance that the rumors that we've heard, or you have mostly heard, of Ericsson being bought out and Colton going to F2, is there a world that we could live in where both those things are true and Rinus would end up in the 28 and Will Power would end up in the 26?
I think only in Dreamland, in La La Land. I mean, that would be cool. I think it would be a great team, but I don't see that happening. I think the only one that I could see it happening for would be like a Dennis Hauger. But no, I don't think you're buying Marcus out for Rinus. Mm-hmm. Now, this F2 thing I think is very interesting, and it's very, very, very real. Rick rolls aside, it's very, very real. Also, I want to make a real quick rant that folks, Colton Herta putting out a Rickroll does not suddenly mean that the information is not true. I think I don't know how I did it, but I think I got probably the most concrete answer out of Colton Herta that you're going to get on this situation, which is I didn't ask him about F2. Maybe that was my clever way of getting around the subject. Was I said, is this your last IndyCar race? And he said, no, it's not my last IndyCar race. But he also said, there's a lot of things that I don't want to talk about this weekend. He was focused on Nashville, but I think if you saw his body language, you saw how he answered the question. And obviously you guys, especially on my channel, but you've seen it elsewhere, and obviously other journalists and media figures in IndyCar have seen it as well. Colton Herta, when something is not true, is the first to tell you it is not true. He does not let those things stick around. He will laugh in your face and say, you idiot, you moron, what are you doing? Why are you saying this? Where did you hear that? Anything that has to do with F2, he does not say that. He does not do that. That is not typical of Colton Herta. Is that 100% a fact? Oh my God, he's going to F2 because he's not denying it? Of course not. But there's no reason that he would be playing this coy with a rumor this big. And I guess we're expecting that announcement tomorrow. And I think, in fact, even Marshall Pruitt had the story this weekend that that Colton might even do F2 races before the end of this year.
I was told that over the weekend. I was told that a team had reached out for Colton services for Petit Le Mans, if I'm not mistaken, and they were told that he has other obligations that weekend that he could not run it, and I believe F2 is running somewhere that weekend, wherever that is. And back to the Rick Roll situation, what I took out of that was he can still run the Indianapolis 500 next year if they want. They do still have that fourth car, and we didn't really, although we heard some things, we never got a concrete answer on whether or not Marco Andretti was back. There's been some small rumblings that I haven't really brought up too much that Michael Andretti is looking to get back into the sport in some shape or form. Maybe he comes in and has an Indy 500 effort with Marco, who knows? But I could see a world where Colton runs F2 races before the end of this year and runs entire F2 next year, because there has been teams that have been reached out to about possibly having Herta in their car next year. But I believe they're off in May for the most part, so he could still run the Indianapolis 500. So him saying it's not his last IndyCar race is probably true. And maybe him saying, I'm never going to let you down, I'm never going to give you up, that could be about him coming back to the Indianapolis 500 next year.
Huh. Oh, man, Harley Gray has a great little point there. Can we highlight that comment? And by the way, I want to just say I know nothing. I know I've worked with them in the past, but this is true, just speculative. Harley's just bringing up a great point. Brian Herta Autosport was real. And I actually learned some more things this weekend that I can't talk about, but was real close to doing the Indy 500 this year. And boy, wouldn't that be cool to have. I'm sure if they had Colton in the car, that they would get all the best stuff from Andretti. That would be a way with their LMP2 team, which also, by the way, any IMSA team has an ample time off to run an Indy 500 program. How about Colton driving for Dad at the Indy 500, and then you could have Marco there too. I think that would be cool. And yes, it would give you an opportunity if you're Brian Herta Autosport to kind of show, hey, we can run a big car, a big team, and please give us the Genesis hypercar. I think that would be a good stepping stone to that. So
that's rumors and speculation.
That's totally rumors and speculation, but I love the idea of that. I'm in love with the idea of that, especially if they do a shell livery. Mm-hmm.
So Marcus Ericsson back in the 28 car next year, more than likely. Kyle Kirkwood signed through 2026. I would be surprised with what he did this year, winning races both on road and street courses and ovals. I would be shocked if Kyle Kirkwood doesn't find himself with an extension. Although we did hear some very small rumors about Kirkwood, the Penske. Those have certainly, I believe, died down since we originally heard those. Moving down to McLaren, we've already talked about that. Let's get to Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan. I know we talked about it a little bit. I was told that Devlin has a contract, we'll just call it for the foreseeable future, which means it's longer than what you usually see when it comes to a contract. Now, is there a clause in there that maybe they have to be on the hook for the money if he doesn't finish inside of the top 22, which he certainly didn't. I think he was the second to last full-time car in the points. As you mentioned, they like Louis Foster. All signs for next year look like they are going to run it back at Ray Hall. David, would you have any reason to believe that that's not the case?
There's been nothing to suggest really that any of those drivers are going to change for next year. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been a couple of things that we've kind of speculated about with Devlin's contract. But as you mentioned, I heard the same thing that you heard, which is that's a long-term contract there in place with Devlin. Now, we don't know about clauses and whatnot. Maybe there's a clause in there that might allow someone else to move in there. But, Ray Hall's kind of structured the way they're structured. And they've even got two drivers in reserve in the basement, right? So I don't know, man. I saw
one of the two drivers on Sunday evening, and I said, I thought you were supposed to be back in Bobby's basement walking the dogs by this time. So I want to bring up an interesting point that I talked to, and that is obviously the fact that we talk about all these drivers. And, I had heard that Kyle Collette possibly with an HMD had a chance at Foyt I don't think the budget came together on that. And Collette's a guy who has talent in Indy Next, but again, same thing we talked about a year ago. Too many assets, not enough seats. And that also aligns with Yuri Vips as well as Toby's salary. And obviously money tells all to get either of those drivers into another car. Now, I am under the understanding that either of those two drivers, if they were to find a ride and have a budget, would be able to leave Rahal and leave Bobby's basement and go run those cars. I had heard out of Indy, past Detroit, probably Road America-ish, that there was some interest in having Yuri Vips in a Prema car. Now, I don't know if that would keep them afloat, what that would look like. There's been some small rumors, but to wrap that up, I have heard that if Toby or Yuri has the budget to go elsewhere, they are allowed to do that.
Great. If I had the budget to go elsewhere, I would too. I mean, sure.
Whoa.
Sure,
Well,
right?
I've gotten at least 5 or 6 of the same questions of, are they tied to Rahal, or if they find something, can they go elsewhere? Because God knows we can't find how long these guys are under contracts. We sure as hell can't find them if they're under freaking developmental, go to the sim, walk my dog contracts.
Well, for sure. But there was a good question or a good comment that, yes, Simon Sturdley said, how can the leadership at Rahal look at the results of this season and say, let's run it back? I mean, that's tough, right? But, at the end of the day, IndyCar is a business. And I think they like what they have in Louis Foster. I think they want to develop him. To Kyle's point, I don't think they want to fumble another Christian Lundgaard. So I think they're putting the eggs in the Louis Foster basket for now. And Graham's had some good results this year. I think we shouldn't look past the 4th place at Portland and some of the qualifying results and some of the top 6s, Fast 6 appearances. Like, they're kind of knocking on the door at some tracks, but
some tracks they're like completely lost.
Wow, like Nashville this year. Yeah. Holy God.
Nashville, Gateway, and it's noticeable because
Graham
they're getting lapped all the time.
Impersonation.
It's crazy. It's like unbelievable how slow those cars are, those tracks.
All right, I'm gonna entertain it. I'm gonna go back to what we said. In the off chance that Graham retires, who would land there?
Oh, man.
I'm just kidding. We're moving on to the next team. All right, so who is the next team here on the chart? I know we wrapped up Rahal. Let's get to Ed Carpenter Racing, which I think is very interesting because I believe Christian told you in the bullpen in the Milwaukee that ended up on your video that he is back for next year. And I certainly think you put him back in that 21 car because, that's right, he won a freaking race. So I think that brings Christian Rasmussen back. I think Alexander Rossi is there long-term. I think there's a little bit more than just driver-owner relationship. I think he has a little bit more stake in that team. I think what Java House has done in the marketing of their team and the promotions that they have at the racetracks, I think they've certainly been happy with that. I think that they've been so happy that they decided to sponsor the Laguna Seca race. Now, could we see somebody else in a third car at Indy outside of Ed Carpenter? I guess that's a possibility, but I think we'll cross that bridge when we start hearing things. I've heard absolutely nothing of that source. So I believe Ed's going to run it back with who he has in the 20 and 21 car next year, David.
Yep. The only thing that I had heard was like a rumbling that they had offered Will Power a contract, but I think that's real dead at this point.
Another driver that continues to come up and had the results in 2024 before losing his ride was Linus Lundqvist. And I believe it was mentioned today in Marshall's article that there is a possibility that Linus would be in line for one of the coin seats. We have seen Linus at the track. We've seen him multiple times.
He's the only guy who ate more food in Honda hospitality than we did this year.
There you go. You took the words right out of my mouth, although we had some excellent food over the weekend with our friends at Honda, especially that French toast and the Oreo parfait.
By the way, first of all, shout out to Honda for feeding us all year. But second of all, shout out to Tim at Honda. My mom actually texted me because I've told my mom about Tim's French toast. It's that good. And she texted me. She was listening to IndyCar radio. And they interviewed Tim from Honda on IndyCar Radio. So shout out to Tim and IndyCar Radio. That's cool.
Do they come to IMSA at IMS?
They should. They don't.
Oh man, come
They
on,
don't.
come on. Can we
They
make
don't.
that happen? Can we make a call? Can we make a call? So Linus Lundqvist, I haven't heard too much. I actually did have a conversation with him. He said he's talked to some teams getting budget together, but as of right now, I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that he is going to be in a full-time car next year. Now, if I'm Brian Reinbold, maybe I consider him for my Indianapolis 500 car. More than likely, Ryan Hunter-Reay's back. I mean, hell, he almost won the race until somebody got on the radio from the pit box and didn't let off the button while Ryan was trying to pit for fuel to win the damn Indianapolis 500 with David Sponsor on the side of the car. But maybe that's a consideration. But David, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I literally had a conversation with Linus over the weekend, and I don't get the sense that he's near the budget to land himself somewhere in 2026.
Man, it would be cool. I mean, Linus, I'll give Linus a lot of credit for being there, right?
Well, I think you have to be, right? You have to be seen. You have to have your helmet just in case, as we've seen, and I'm not just talking about Nolan Siegel. There's multiple drivers that have gotten into accidents, veteran drivers, if let's just say, and obviously it would never have happened because they wouldn't have been in that situation. But let's say Malukas' wreck happened on Saturday and he's not cleared to drive. Obviously, you would go, well, who's here? Who's on the grounds that could hop in that car? So continue.
Yeah, I mean, he was there. I mean, he was ready to go in Toronto. If Nolan Siegel wasn't ready for game time, it was going to be Linus driving that car. So I mean, he's been given the opportunity when it's arose, and he's clearly wanting to be an IndyCar driver. That's what he wants to do. At some point, I feel like you've got to try to make a living elsewhere, though. You can't just always 100%. Be bringing the helmet to the track. So I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to do this, but shout out to him. He's doing I really respect what he's doing.
So last week we had learned of the Cusick partnership in Indy Next with HMD as well, but there has been some rumors and speculation that Don wants to continue his focus on full-time entry for an IndyCar team. Obviously, he's not going to run that by himself. It would make sense to see him partner with somebody at McLaren because of the connection that he has with Arrow. Anything new that we have heard on the Cusick side and possibly a jump to IndyCar away from Brian Reinbold?
We've heard things. I don't know if we've heard anything concrete yet. I would be very surprised if they're not involved in some sort of a program, at least for the Indy 500. But I believe there are announcements coming at some point, but I don't know exactly when or what they are.
I think that about wraps it up. I mean, I think we haven't
talked about Will Power yet.
How
have we not talked about Will Power?
We brought up Will Power so many times. I feel like we're just running around Will Power this whole time.
Right.
What do you mean?
Didn't you say that we've already talked about him leaving? We talked about that, and then we talked about him going to Andretti.
What haven't we talked? How Penske has treated him.
Okay.
How have we not brought this up?
This up the last 4 shows.
Yeah, but it's real now. They actually
did I not say that I don't believe Chip would handle Scott Dixon the same way that Roger has handled Will? I'll let you elaborate on that.
Well, I agree. I mean, it's unbelievable. And when you look at his stats, I mean, I get it. He hasn't been good in the Indy 500 the last couple of years, but that's the only mark on his resume that's like a knock. Everything else has been damn good. And he's literally on IndyCar's Mount Rushmore. He is the 4th winningest driver, the outright pole winner, and it's not even close, beating Mario, God bless America, Andretti, right? By 6 races. So, you know what? I'm telling you what. If he is getting announced at Andretti tomorrow, which, again, it sure does sound like he is, the Will Power Revenge Tour is going to be unbelievable. I bet he's on pole by 0.7 of a second in St. Pete. Mark it down, NASCAR man. I said it here first. Because, if you look at the last few races of the season, and Joe and I were talking about this on the way home, is that he could win. He could have won the last 3 races of the season. He won Portland, was in contention at Milwaukee before he got crashed, and was in contention at Nashville before he crashed in the pits. So Will is still got the speed. And I think if he gets to Andretti, and Andretti has the confidence in him, Will Power in that street course package, those street course dampers, look out. He's going to the front.
I completely agree. I mean, I put a tweet out about this in July that everybody saw. Like that blew up.
Everybody saw it.
And I completely agree. Like you gave away a driver who's on the Mount Rushmore, who is still succeeding, who is the only driver while Alex Palou has been at Ganassi, the only driver to beat him in the points. Like, that should be enough to say, well, maybe we should keep this guy for the rest of his career, a guy we've had for 17 years. And also, last note, just because I'm a nerd, it just makes Scott Dixon still being in the 9 car even more impressive. Like, that's insane. Because I'm thinking back to my childhood, and I'm going, well, what cars and drivers are still there?
2003.
Well, it's Dixon in the 9 by a long shot, and then the next pairing that's been as long, like any significant amount, is Graham at the 15. Like, geez, that's impressive. Like, that's insane to think about that. You know, the only 2 numbers and drivers still together, I believe. And I think Joseph's technically counts, but like really since like the teens has been Dixon and Graham, and I guess Joseph since 2017. So impressive, insane.
David, let me ask you this. We talk about Penske to Andretti and things changing, and somebody had asked me this over the weekend, and I really didn't have an answer because I wasn't sure. Obviously we've seen Kyle Moyer land at McLaren, lurking somewhere, and maybe he just wants to be a dad and he just doesn't want to be around. But you got to think Tim Cindric's phone is ringing from multiple teams.
I would think that too. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him back. I haven't heard anything concrete like you, but I think there's a lot of people that would think that, if money's no object at a team like Andretti, why not try to go get him?
I think the team that should grab him the most, I think, is Ed Carpenter Racing. I think if Ed Carpenter Racing could grab a guy like Tim Cindric, that's the next step they need to being the team that they should be. Like I think
how close is he to Jay Fry? That could be. They could go after.
Yeah.
That. Well,
I don't think Jay Fry and Cindric like each other very much. I don't think you're going to see him at Rahal anytime soon.
That was that was made clear multiple times this year. So we've broken it all down. So if you missed something, please go back and watch Unverified. There is a boat ton of info that we went through, a boat ton of things that we've heard could happen, is going to happen. I hope it all doesn't just happen right off the bat here, because we've got 6 more months to try to break some things down. I know we got some tests throughout the off season as well. As far as I know, maybe not unless we want to, but we'll still have Unverified during the off season. There may be some conflicts that come up that maybe take us away from it or move us or those type of things. I'm going to try to do some more interviews for this channel. I thought the Tony Kanaan one went pretty well. David, you have more than likely another video coming out tomorrow night. You got the DL 500 Club coming up tomorrow night as well. You got an awesome one-on-one interview with the champ, Alex Palou, that folks can check out on your channel. What else we're going to be working on over on the David Land on YouTube channel?
Whatever breaks tomorrow probably is going to be the point du jour. We'll have the DL 500 Club as well, where I'll probably get more spicy than I'm going to get with whatever we end up finding out, whether it's Colton to F2, whether it's Power to Andretti, whether it's, should I walk down and just hang out outside the PRI building starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow and just see who pulls in and out of there and see who might be rolling around the back to hop in? You think Will Power's in town? I mean, he might be. Bold of you. Maybe we could get out our little phone app there and see what planes are coming in from Charlotte. But I don't know.
Should I go sit outside the JW or the Conrad Hotel?
Yeah. Have your Verizon Will Power jersey ready for him to sign.
Oh, that was also something real quick. I believe Verizon's tied to Penske, and obviously with the IMS connection, how much money has Verizon spent at IMS? Putting up some cell towers and Wi-Fi, that type of stuff. So I don't see them leaving with Will Power to go, or to leave Penske to go with Will Power. So A lot coming up. Kyle, I know you had a great weekend with Kart Chaser in Mooresville, North Carolina. So what do we see there, and what else you got coming up over the next couple of weeks?
Well, that was an incredible event. Kart Chaser actually let me, the boys let me on the mic last weekend. I was on the pre and post race show, and I credit a lot of the time on this show to kind of how that performance went. Honestly, today in the karting world, Ryan Norberg announced he's retiring from full-time racing. So I had a lot to deal with today. I had a lot of mental
silly season.
I had a lot of mental hurdles to jump today, waking up and just seeing, Will Power's gone. That actually got announced while we're putting the Norberg press release up. Oh boy. And Rinus, and it's going to be the same thing tomorrow. So today was a bad day to sleep in. But we're going to be, I think so, off this weekend, back at it in North Carolina next weekend. So it's going to slow down a little bit. We're getting into the season of one-off events as we kind of get towards Vegas. But there is an event next month in October called the MG Tires 200, which is an endurance race, and Joseph Newgarden will be racing. So if you live in Indiana, make sure you come out to that. David's going to be pit reporting. It's going to be a great time. Maybe we'll have Trevor and cook them up some French toast or something. We'll make it home. We're gonna have a great time that weekend.
Trevor, don't burn it.
I'll come out.
If you're listening, send Trevor the recipe so he can do it right.
No, that's a secret recipe. It's sacred inside of the content. All right, so don't forget to like and subscribe. We had an awesome amount of people tuned in tonight. I think we got to 370 at one point. We should get some shirts. One more thing before we go. We mentioned a few times, will Honda stay? I'll leave you with this. We won't know for a couple more weeks, so you have to stay tuned right here to Unverified.